48.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, From Passion to Action. My name is Adriana Sanchez-Aldana, and I am the Executive Director of the California Council for Adult Education. Today's webinar is the next in a series that we are calling Learn at Lunch. CCAE's intent with this brief webinar series is to bring you topics of current relevance and demand that will help build meaningful connections during these most interesting, challenging, and ongoing times. They are complementary to members and underwritten by our partners in the field of adult education. I'd also like to give a great deal of credit to Branca Marchetta, Director of the CARIC Consortium in Sacramento, and member at large on the CCAE Executive Board, for ensuring that CCAE makes these topics available to all of you. Also, many thanks to David Palmer, CCAE Office Manager, for ensuring that all of the details behind the scenes work together, particularly the technology. As you can see by the dates listed at the bottom of this slide, Learn at Lunch will be held once or twice a month on Tuesdays. We have Tuesday, November 3rd, our next webinar with financial literacy presented by First Federal Credit Union. We have Tuesday, November 17th at noon, Burlington Core, presented by our friends at Burlington English. And Tuesday, December 1st at noon, presentation update from our friends at the GED Testing Service. So before we get started, I have a couple of logistical items to share with you. All the lines are muted, so if you have a question that you would like to ask, please go to the question tab at the bottom of your screen, or at the top of your screen if you're using a tablet to view today's webinar. We will be monitoring the question tab for questions, so if you want to use the chat pod, please enter your name and your agency. If you put questions in there, they'll be monitored, but a little bit less than the question tab. So put your questions in the question tab. You'll be able to type in questions that you may have during the presentation. Our presenters will be monitoring, as I said, the question tab, and will address those questions either throughout the presentation or at the end. Yes, the webinar is being recorded and will be shared after the broadcast. Many thanks to our annual partners, First Financial Credit Union, as well as Burlington English and GED Testing Service, for their continued support of CCAE and the field of adult education. One last logistical item. Please be sure to answer the questions in our short poll at the end of the webinar. So for today's agenda, I will be providing a few CCAE announcements and updates, introducing our presenters, and then we'll move on with our presentation. As I mentioned before, there will be time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So we just have a couple of announcements for you to be aware of. And one is that CCAE leadership is currently in the beginning planning stages of an advocacy campaign that will include the use of Ignite software, which is the easy-to-use program that we partner with COABE, that allows CCAE members to contact their national, state, and local legislators in 3 clicks. We will share campaign information with you in the upcoming weeks. In the meantime, never hesitate to be in contact with your local representatives regarding the continued support you are providing to our communities and students. Also, state awards. Every year at the state conference, CCAE recognizes excellence in the field of adult education. This year, due to the pandemic, we were unable to do so, as you already know. Please save Friday, December 4th at 5 p.m. for a virtual state awards recognition event to honor our 2020 awardees. More details will be forthcoming, and please be sure to sign up for this event. So let's get on to today's presentation and today's content. We're very fortunate to have Joanne Durkee, school board member with Mount Diablo Unified School District. Many of you know that Joanne is a retired adult education director and longtime adult ed advocate. It's wonderful to see that she continues her advocacy in retirement. Our other presenter is Victoria Bate, and she is the current director of Mount Diablo Adult College and Career Education. Both of today's presenters have also served as CCAE state legislative chairs. Victoria currently holds this position, and Joanne currently serves on the CCAE board as member at large. Joanne and Victoria, thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedules to be with us today to share your experiences and expertise. And if you just give me a moment, I will go to my other screen. Oop. There we go. Joanne?
Oh, sorry. So I'm not seeing the, maybe I'm not seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So, but I'll start talking. Thank you.
We've got your title page up, okay?
Yeah, so I'm not seeing that. Let me figure out what I'm doing wrong here. I'll figure it out.
Could the participants let us know to be sure that everybody's seeing the PowerPoint? Could somebody in the chat pod? Hi, this is Victoria, just to make sure. Nothing, not seen. I think we need, yeah, just to check.
So it's not just me.
Thank you, everyone. We'll get it going. Hang on.
Oops. Somebody's saying click share on Zoom.
Well, we were sharing. Hold on a second. Let me go back and share. Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
So if I could sing, I would sing to everybody, but some of you know well, I don't sing well.
Yeah, okay. We will get you. All right, I'm going to share this screen. How's that? Let's try this other screen. This will work.
There we
Yeah,
go.
so if you go to beginning, yeah,
Okay.
Great. Okay,
yeah.
Good. Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm sorry
for the stress. No, that's all right. So I was seeing everything. I'm sorry that didn't see it all. Okay.
So, well, thank you again. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And welcome to everybody. It's actually fun to see a number of names that I know, people I know well, and it's nice to quote unquote see everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm really happy to be here. And I'm also really happy to be able to do this with my good friend and former colleague, Victoria. So Victoria, you want to say hello?
Yes, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to see you Zooming with us today. I recognize many of you, and there are some that I hope to meet when we are at a better point in time and can see each other face to face at an event. Welcome.
So I hope you like our title. I thought maybe I should explain myself a little bit. But the next slide, it kind of has a statement of who we saw this presentation being designed for. So it's designed for those who are, and I know there's many of you on here who are, or I wanted to say soon will be, because sometimes it takes a little time if you're newer to adult ed, passionate about the importance of adult education and serving the families and communities of K-12 school districts. So the first part of this is really trying to provide some background and context. Victoria and I wanted to sort of help you see how we got to this thinking and what we're trying to share with you today. If you were at the CCAE conference, I think a year ago, you would have heard this, hopefully you might have heard this presentation. And so, if you have it, hopefully you've been thinking about or have given it some thought, and this might be an opportunity to drill down a little bit more. So again, as some background was mentioned, I actually had the privilege of being an adult educator for 37 years. And part of what I loved about my work and my career was working with so many others who were passionate about adult education and who shared really a deep, profound belief in the importance of our work. And of course, I also loved seeing how adult education truly changed lives. So when I retired, I was ready, I have to admit, I was ready and happy to embark on the next phase of my personal journey. But I soon realized, and many of you heard me say this, is the passion doesn't retire. It's hard to do this work, though, as you all know, without caring deeply about the students, their needs, their interests, and their unique circumstances. So for many of you, like for me and Victoria, it's a labor of love. And your local school, adult school, benefits from that. But I think it's also important point out that this kind of commitment, this passion really served adult education students across the state very well when it became critical, absolutely necessary for us to enlighten policymakers and elected officials about the role that K-12 adult education plays in our communities. So while this advocacy work is still critical, we have to ask ourselves, and it goes on, I will say, as you heard earlier, Adriana talking about Dawn Kepke and her continually working hard for us in Sacramento with the messaging. But we have to ask ourselves, is it enough? And what we're focusing on is how do we apply some of those same messaging and strategies more locally? So today we want to share some of our learning experiences and strategies that we've embarked on more recently, including at the end, we're going to quickly run through a pilot that we've done. So with that background, we wanted to have, like all good teachers, have objectives for our time, and that's what you're seeing up on the screen now. We're hoping that it's going to increase the awareness, importance, and the power of school board member and superintendent support of K-12 adult education, and also to give you some strategies for engaging school board members and superintendents in local and state advocacy initiatives of K-12 adult education. So I want to also point out that, for each of us individually, this whole thinking process and skill set really is evolutionary process. Everybody here has their own level and depth of experience. And I hope that Victoria and I both hope that you will find that this presentation will deepen your thought process about this. I'll say, up front that the format of this is a lot of talking at you, but I'm hoping maybe you can kind of take a deep breath and really think about what we're saying and start to think about how you can apply this efforts. So, and as was mentioned, you have the opportunity of the Q&A function as well. So, okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. The question we have to ask ourselves, or I would ask you, why school board members matter. So put very simply, as a starting point, school boards and the superintendent are the governance team for all that goes on in a school district. School boards are responsible for setting policy and holding the superintendent accountable for agreed upon goals and outcomes. And while it might not be immediately apparent, that includes their adult education program in schools. Now, I know you know this on some level, but I'm just hoping again that will inspire you to think about this somewhat differently and figure out how to use these ideas in ways that are positive for your local adult education program, and then also have an impact on the state. So next slide. So I wanted to share a little bit of my experience. Again, after a 37-year career, I honestly was not planning on running for school board. It was not on my radar, but I got approached and I started thinking about how it might give me another opportunity to advocate for public education, but of course, as well as adult education. But very quickly, changing seats, I realized that the level of knowledge about adult education among school board members, and in some cases superintendents, is typically not very deep, even though they have full responsibility for it, just like everything else that goes on in their district. I also realized that for so long, we just naturally accepted that their primary focus is and always will be K-12. I lived through, like many of you, or some of you did, through the impact of the Great Recession starting in 2007, and had to steer our adult school through the flexibility challenges. And I witnessed firsthand the floating of the notion of moving all of K-12 adult education to community college system, and was directly involved with CCAE and CCAE making the decision to reorganize and join forces for state advocacy. I was on the task force that was convened by CDE and the Community College Chancellor's Office to figure out how this regional consortium model would work. And of course, it was my great privilege to work closely with our wonderful budget policy advocate, Don Kepke. But my last year of working included convening of our local consortia and developing a plan. Again, I have to admit, by the end of that year, I was ready to hand the baton over to Victoria, knowing it was going to be in capable hands, but also could see the big challenges that were coming ahead. So sorry, Victoria. But also feeling good that there was now separate and distinct funding for adult education in the state budget. So when I became a trustee for our same district, I've not been shy about sharing my experience of adult education, serving families. The scope was obviously much larger. There were times I was compelled to ask at CSBA meetings, what about adult education? And I could see it would take some doing to make sure adult education was at the table. So we really want to stress that knowledge is power. And if we ourselves aren't providing the knowledge, who will? So I'm going to facilitate having you go through a quick survey. It's on the next slide. And I'll just run through these. I know you can read, but I'll run through them really quickly. Most simply, have school board members visited your programs, your events, your sites? How many times have you had the opportunity to present at school board meetings? Does your board really know and understand the educational training programs you provide? Do they know how many students you serve and what the outcomes are? Are they aware of the partnerships you have with other organizations? Do they understand the consortium work and the membership, governance structure, needs assessment, and plan? Are they aware of your budget? Yes, your budget and financial situation. Do they have a role in your consortium governance structure? Do they understand how adult education is funded at the state level? So you can see these questions get a little deeper as we go down the list. What we're talking about is moving from what I always used to call feel-good presentations, information about student stories, program descriptions, special events, to board members and superintendents, to obtaining a strong working knowledge of their adult school and its impact. While I do understand the difficult situation many school and superintendents were in during the Great Recession, I can't help but feel like there may have been a little less devastation had there been a better understanding of the value added of adult education to K-12. And just me being me, I also never lose sight of the possibility of having to once again defend the existence of adult education in K-12. But again, we need to make the case for what would be lost and who would no longer be served. So the next slide, please. So how can you do this? How can informed and engaged school board members really make a difference? So a couple of years ago, while continuing to help with CCAE and CCAE advocacy, including our powerful and well-crafted platforms and messaging, it hit me that there are so many statewide efforts and organizations focused on funding for public education. ACSA, ACSA, Association of California School Administrators, California School Board Association, CTA, just to name a few. And I realized in that context, the voice for K-12 adult education can at times seem like a tiny pipsqueak in a hurricane. But another way to see it is that adult education is a subset of each of these other organizations. Out of 977 school districts, 255 have adult education. If the school board members and superintendents of those 255 districts were inspired and compelled to speak up, within CSBA, within AXA, within CASBO, within the California Association of Latino Superintendents and Administrators. For example, it really could move the dial for adult education. More simply, if each K-12 adult education administrator could compel some of their district leaders to advocate because they truly do believe in the value added, their voices would be heard differently from everyone else's or from adult educators. But we have to provide them with the information. So that means really clarifying and fine-tuning the message. The information or the message needs to be backed by relevant information that resonates. So for example, district school business officers need to understand the funding and all its nuances. School site administrators need to know about the various education training resources available to their parents. Superintendents need to be aware of the depth of support in the community of their adult school and the various resources available through adult education. And school board members need to understand, in addition to all of that, how adult education supports families and supports healthy communities. Again, value added of their adult education programs and services. So now I'm going to turn it over to Victoria. Victoria, you're on mute. No.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, everyone. I was looking at a question, or actually a statement from one of our colleagues in the question and answer box, and do want to encourage you, as you have questions, to put the questions in the Q&A. We will try to answer all the questions at the end, and if not, we will definitely be available to you with our contact information on our last slide so that you can contact us directly. It's been a pleasure, Joanne, to work with you all these years. Thank you for your support of adult education, both as former director here and also on the Mount Diablo Unified School District Board. And I'm quite sure you can all imagine how wonderful that really is to have that kind of support with a board member who knows adult ed. So I would encourage you all to consider encouraging our past adult ed directors and principals who are retiring to consider running for their school boards, your school board. It's a wonderful opportunity. So what is the message you want to share really for your adult school and community? Keeping the concept of value added in mind, which is all important in our work, you want to ask yourself, among all that your adult schools provide, what are the few key areas that really make the strongest case for how your school district, your K-12 community, is better for having your adult education program? And as you might imagine, Joanne and I have talked a lot about this over the years, and we continue to talk about it. And I'm going to share a few ways Mount Diablo has addressed this. So first and foremost, at the forefront of many discussions today are immigrant families, immigrant integration. This is the critical support we provide families desirous of integrating into their new home and school communities, and in particular, those parents and families of the K-12 children in our school districts. Most, or many at least, who have come from around the world to start a new life for themselves and their families, and often due to very difficult circumstances in their home countries. This work we do is a core mission of adult education in California, and great work has been done by adult educators in supporting these new families in our communities for many years. As you know, this is our legacy in California when we talk about going back to the start of adult education at St. Mary's in San Francisco, the basement of the church in St. Mary's. The Allies Immigrant Integration Network framework, which many of you are familiar with, was recently developed for use by us in the field of adult ed. And it was originally developed really as a result of this long history of important adult education programming and services. And now the student outcome metrics are part of the outcome data we collect and hope to be able to show and share to show the importance and efficacy of these important programs and services. ESL. I know I'm speaking to the choir on this one. ESL, in tandem with immigrant integration, is integral and it's core to the mission of adult education. ESL programming provides those adults and families in our community with the opportunity to integrate, to participate, and fully engage with and within their home and school communities through our multiple levels of instruction and multi-level classrooms, which of course are all based on solid pedagogical research and national metrics, which help us to demonstrate the competencies that our students gain. Family literacy. This is one of my favorite topics and programs in adult ed because it really encompasses the families in our community very broadly. ESL Family Literacy is a core program in adult ed, helps parents acquire language, literacy, and tutoring skills that in turn help them help their children, our K-12 students, to succeed in school. Parents develop fluency in both spoken and written English that support and help ensure their integration into the school community and the community where they live. As you know, parents acquire an awareness and an understanding of the school system and classroom culture, developing through language skills building, critical communication strategies for communicating and working with school leadership and staff of the schools where their children attend, improving student attendance, persistence, and their students' overall success in their schoolwork and activities. Our school readiness programs focus on children aged 3 to 5 years. They learn kindergarten readiness, English language and literacy skills. Simultaneously, our parents and children participate in ESL family literacy classes together. Parents become aware of the school readiness fundamentals their children need. They gain access to appropriate programs for their preschool children, and they engage with the staff of these programs who also then can help guide them in successfully supporting their children's early learning. And citizenship, so important for those individuals and families who are desirous of further establishing themselves as fully participating, civically engaged members of their home and their school communities. For over 165 years, these programs have been central to the core mission of adult education. These are the families and students we serve, right? And the work that we do in these areas are why we exist in our communities. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about parent support. Parent education, similar to what ELS family literacy programs provide families, offers school readiness classes for children 16 months to 4 years of age using a co-op or cooperative model. These programs, like ESL family literacy programs, also truly support, educate, and importantly, empower parents to be proactive in their children's early learning and to also better understand the importance of their roles as the primary caregiver, the model, and the advocate for their children. Unlike ESL, though, parent ed programs like these can be and often are supported by K-12 district LCFF or local control funding formula, such as we have, of course, here at Mount Diablo. And we are part of the K-12 district LCAP or local control accountability plan. This certainly raises our profile within our K-12 school district work with our colleagues. And recently, CCAE and CCAE have developed a white paper, which we use now as an advocacy tool to share the long history of early learning education in adult education, the importance of these programs in serving the parents of our K-12 children, and the importance of continuing to build on this expertise in serving these parents in our communities. The title of this paper is Early Childhood Education and Parent Education Through California Adult Schools. And you will receive a copy of this if you haven't seen it yet after today's webinar with a little outreach we will do afterward. I'd like to also mention that in addition to this white paper, Joanne and someone, a longtime colleague of ours and of mine, Sue Pon, who I believe is here today on this in this webinar with us, have provided a wonderful webinar through CalPro on adult education's role in early learning and parent education. And Joanne and Sue did this just, I believe it was about a year ago in the CalPro webinar series. Sue at that time was what we called Queen of Family Literacy and Parent Support Programs at Oakland Adult and Career Education. And thank you both for providing that. And this PowerPoint presentation can be provided you, anyone on this webinar today, if you would like to request it from us, please. As you know, Parent Ed also serves K-12 parents and families through specialized classes and resources on critical parenting issues, such as child development, dealing with difficult behavior, drug and alcohol interventions, anger management, and court-mandated parenting certificate courses. And of course, last but not least, as a result of this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Adult Ed, Parent Ed is front and center in supporting parents of all the students in our school districts, helping them navigate the world of online distance education or distance learning so they in turn can support their children in order to be successful in this new K-12 teaching and learning environment that we are all in. Next slide, please. Economic self-sufficiency. We have many adults who come to us for our adult basic education classes. And as you know, these are our adult students who really want to obtain, retain, or advance in jobs that support their families. And when they come to us, we open the doors to them for other training opportunities for further advancement in the workplace. Adults who want to advance in the workplace and also model for their K-12 children often come to us to earn their high school diploma. What better way than to model for a K-12 student when it's a parent modeling the importance of adult ed? And adults who've identified they can and should pursue advanced training in a field or transition to college to improve their position in the workplace and better support their families with higher paying jobs and careers come to us for all kinds of training, including adult basic ed, high school, CTE. Thank you for changing the slide, because now I'd like to focus a little bit on what you all know is so critical in our work, which is building solid relations for lasting success. So once you know what your key messaging is, how and when do you help others to see it, hear it, know about it? As adult educators, you know, as so much depends upon building relationships. It takes time, but if people come to know you and as someone who is, as Joanne said, passionate, but also working for the greater good, they're more likely to hear and to see what you are sharing. So very briefly now, here are a few key points to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So identify effective communication strategies within the context of your district protocols, and that's underlining your district protocols. Learn the established district chain of command and communication protocols. Who can you send information to? And can staff send directly to the board, or does it need to go to the superintendent first? Do you have other K-12 colleagues that you should be sending information to? And will they share with the superintendent or the board? Take opportunities to share information and make announcements at all the various staff convenings, principal meetings, cabinet meetings, or the like. And don't forget, ask what is needed that you may be able to provide. Be a team player. Be proactive on this point, please. Next slide, please. So what does being part of the system look like? And what's the important messaging through these relationships? And here I've listed a host of ways that I have been communicating. And frankly, when I started putting these down, I was a little surprised at how many opportunities I actually have to share the message, the good message of the good work that Adult Ed does. And in our case, that Mount Diablo Adult Education does. I attend board meetings. I share at board agenda prep meetings. I make sure that our Adult Ed board agenda items are lifted up in our agenda prep discussions. We go forward with our annual California Adult Ed Week resolutions and presentation, our student success presentations. We make sure we invite our board members, our superintendent, and other district staff members, as well as community members, to our family literacy and preschool events, our high school graduations. I make sure that I'm at Superintendent K to adult meetings. And if I can't, for some reason, I make sure that a representative of our school, a vice principal, or a member of our coordinator team can attend. Alternative ed meetings, cabinet meetings, so important, where we have those deep discussions with our K-12 district colleagues about school district business, which includes adult ed. LCAP stakeholder meetings, since we provide parent ed, which is LCFF funded, we participate in these, another opportunity to share what we do. Chamber of Commerce. I sit as a board member on their Chamber of Commerce representing our school district, but you can become a member, if not a board member, and do presentations. Workforce Development Board. Do you sit on your Workforce Development Board? I hope you do. And if not, if you think about it, it's a great way to participate in your community broadly around all the workforce development we do under WIOA, CTEC, and many of our other programs like high school programs and even our family support programs. Community and local legislator meetings, contribute articles, make sure you have articles and snippets and photos to share with the superintendent for your superintendent's newsletters to the staff, community. Get it on your district website, your own website, and board updates. So important for the board to have some of that information, which might not otherwise be shared with them, but when it comes directly from you. Participate in career fairs, staff development events, and the like. So obviously, these are quite a few different things, and I'm sure you have more, but I think the important thing is that once trust and respect is earned, it's really easier to see how your participation will be value added. I know that's been my experience, and we all need to think deeply about how we can position ourselves and go forward with this ongoing sharing that we do in our roles in adult ed. All right, and now back to you, Joanne.
Great, thank you, Victoria. That was great. So again, I'm just going to keep saying this: keeping the goal in mind is having more informed board members and superintendents, because that can happen simultaneously, but have them come out with a stronger sense of ownership, responsibility for, and commitment to adult education. So, again, as we keep saying, this kind of goes beyond. I know some of you have been there, done that. You know all of this. You've had lots of experience with it. But I think, when I became a board member, it was sort of astonishing to me to realize how staff often doesn't even think about the board. And obviously that's the important message here. So we're going to move on quickly because I know our time is getting shorter. We're going to share very quickly a pilot. I'm literally, Adriana, if we can run through these next slides, I'll just say go or do slide, because I really just want to give you a flavor for this. And again, we're happy to share in more detail. But one thing it came to me as a board member is board members speak to board members, and they make themselves available to board members. So I've wanted to take full advantage of that role and came up with this idea of convening the board members in Contra Costa County of the 7 school districts that have adult education. And so, but I also have to kind of know the politics within CSBA, and I'm just you're seeing 2 leaders. Again, if you were at CCAE, both of these folks very kindly presented with us. So CSBA has its own structure of organization, and Yolanda Mendrick is our local Region 7 director. So people know her She's respected, and so I worked closely with her, got her on this idea to work with me on this. The other thing is CSBA. It's only been in the last 3 or 4 years, and I have found out that they have some holes in this design. There's some parts of the state or some regions where they don't have a person, but they hired staff to be public affairs and community engagement representatives. We were fortunate with Gabe Weiss. I asked to meet with him. This again, obviously pre-COVID, and I was amazed at how receptive he was to talking about adult ed. And he's got a huge background in organizing, and so we got them on board with us to work on this idea. And if you can go to the next slide, again, it's about, kind of leveraging relationships. So Yolanda actually sent an invitation out. Victoria and I hosted the meeting at Mount Abel Adult. And so, because she had the relationship, I didn't have the same relationships with everybody at that point. And so, but I was kind of the contact person. So that was an important step. Next slide was really about being, like you all know, when you have meetings, you got to really be thoughtful about the agenda design. We wanted it to inform people, but we weren't sure where people's level of understanding or knowledge was. So we needed to also be flexible. So like over prepare to be able to meet them where their level of needs and interest, frankly. I wasn't sure how they were going to respond to this. So the next slides are literally the agenda. And again, I just want to give you a flavor. So we started with, why are we here? Welcome, of course, why are we here? You did introductions, and we asked them to each share one issue or piece of information or something that they wanted to talk about or wanted to share about their particular adult schools. It was a way to get a sense of the depth of knowledge or lack thereof they had about their own adult school. It was a safe environment. It wasn't a huge group. It was like 10 people, I think, total with all of us. And so I think it was safe for people to say, or comfortable for people to say whatever they wanted to say. And it was interesting because some of the comments were how it just really, we realized how misinformed they were, some of the myths that had gotten out there. So next slide, we then did like kind of what's it all about, did spend some time, the big picture background, starting with the 2008 recession, everything we kind of did to start this webinar today, explaining the consortium model a little bit more. Next slide, we went into more detail. This is where Victoria came in and was able to talk because she co-chairs our local consortium. So she was able to talk about, how it plays out in Contra Costa County. How do people become members? They are appointed, as you all know, by school boards. So it kind of tied it back to the school board member. The structure that we pointed out that the Brown Act is in play, and the 3-year plan, the fiscal structure. Next slide. We provided information on what this looks like at the state level. What the state structure is, it's an attempt to have these 2 state agencies work together. There's a CAPE office, there's technical assistant. We shared some at the time were the key advocacy points and platform that Don Kepke had provided. And then there was, at that time, other issues and challenges. At that point, we were we, meaning CCAE and CCAE, focused more on teacher credentialing. We're still focused on carryover, focused on local governance consortia governance challenges. And then the next slide, kind of putting the question to them, why do they think it's important to have a K-12 based adult education program? And again, what would be lost or diminished or eliminated if it was diminished or eliminated? Let's see. I think that this process really worked well, that particular point. They were very animated, very engaged in the conversation. They were inspiring. I really could feel that, overall, they were super supportive of adult ed. I mean, after all, they showed up. And that was just very validating for sure. So next slide, we had some kind of takeaway questions for them to go back and think about, and maybe we'll put different lenses on as they're looking at what's going on. Find out, ask questions about the funding for their adult school. How much are they getting, and what are some of the issues? Is it enough? Is it not enough? How can we keep them informed as a group? and then how they can make a difference. So I'll probably say this again later, but board members they're elected officials. They want to do stuff. They were interested in the idea of attending again, remember, this is all pre-COVID, the CCAE conference. And so, as I mentioned, we had, Yolanda agreed to come and participate with us in Sacramento at this similar presentation. We suggested attending their local consortium meetings. And then next slide is similar to today. We provided them with some hard copies of things like the Immigrant Integration Framework, the white paper we just talked about, and then again, the advocacy. So going to the next slide, I just want to say, as I mentioned, it worked. It was, really wasn't sure how it was going to go over. But again, like I said, they're action oriented. They want, what can we do? What can we say? Tony Thurman comes from Contra Costa County. So a lot of these folks know him personally. And so they were sort of like, I'll call him. Let me call him. Or maybe we can meet with him. Plus they can help spread the word out. That one of the outcomes of that was they wanted to do a presentation wanted a presentation done at the next CSBA conference. We did put together a proposal, and it didn't get accepted for this time because of them having to scale back. It's understandable in a lot of ways, but maybe not necessarily. We shouldn't just settle for that. Not to say acceptable. That's why it shouldn't be talked about. So I will say also that I have been super impressed by CSBA as an organization. They are, first of all, they're huge. What they accomplish, how they influence policy in the general public. And so again, to me, it's like, here's a great opportunity to get that voice speaking up on behalf of adult education. So the next slide is kind of building a little bit on what Victoria had talked about. We need more people on school boards who are passionate. They don't necessarily have to be a former adult educator. That's great if they can be, but they have to, be passionate about it, or it'd be great if they're passionate about it. So first thing I'm going to say is, what about you? I never thought I would do this in a million years. It never occurred to me until I got approached and had to really think about it. And I saw, again, the opportunity. And of course, you're not just focusing on adult ed as a board member, but you are advocating for public education. And I will say that it's not as big a learning curve for someone who's been in education. So I think just even getting educators to run, but you can also reach out to the candidates. When you have a race going on in your district, reach out to them and just ask questions. I've been doing that now in different education races, and I explained to them, my dedication to adult ed and wanted to make sure it can grow and thrive. So you can do that. You each have your own networks of people to talk to. And then you can encourage elected officials. So a state assembly can endorse a school board candidate, for example. It does mean becoming political, and I just think long-term, it is the next kind of frontier that we need to pursue as adult educators and as our two professional organizations. So I always remember what Dawn Kepke had told us from day one when we first started working with her, is you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that's true in your school district. It's true in the state politics as well. So with that, we're done with our presentation. I think the PowerPoint is I think if somebody can correct me wrong, but I understood the PowerPoint does automatically get sent out to everybody. This PowerPoint, the other PowerPoint we can send out on request. And I guess, yes. Do we have time for questions?
We do have time for questions. And I think, Adriana, do you have any, do you want me just to go ahead with questions now, or is there something you would like to chime in on?
No, you can go ahead with questions, Victoria, and okay. I'm just going to leave the questions slide up, and let me know when you're finished so that I can just thank everyone.
Okay, well, we've had a couple of questions already in the question and answers, and I've answered them, and I hopefully everybody can see the answers to that. We had some really good ideas, also some good questions. So I don't want to reiterate what maybe people have read, but there was a question about, which I think is really pertinent to our discussion today about whether or not there's a coordinated CCAE language or message to be used when addressing school boards and superintendents. And this came from Bob Lynch. He's working in his district trying to address at the local level, but they are looking at, maybe getting some guidance. And although we don't have any talking points or direct pieces that we can point to as guidance, we are raising or lifting up this issue as part of our overall advocacy, statewide advocacy. As Joanne
may I chime in real quick? So, so actually, when I first started going down this road of a thought process, I actually sat down and wrote some things. It's not been endorsed by any other organization, but I thought that was really important to your point or to your question. And so, that is something that I'm, I do participate still with CCAE and CCAE on these weekly calls around the platform and advocacy efforts. So I'm happy to offer to do some of that as well. I can pull up stuff I've already written. So if that's helpful, I'm happy to do that.
Well, Bob is going to perhaps get in touch with us. And I think the message I want to share with everyone on the subject is that we are moving in that direction to lift the profile of this work to be really relevant and very important to our statewide advocacy. And I think you will hear and see more coming in the future. So I'll just let that stand for now, and more to come on that.
Victoria, can I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
I think that that was the whole point of using this opportunity to have you and Joanne talk about the work that you've done, because I know that so many people in their own agencies may feel that they're in isolation and they're not sure if what they're doing is the same thing that you're doing, or not sure what steps to take. So I see a lot of those items on your list as things that maybe people have done one or two of those things, but now there's a whole list of things, and they know that they are moving in the right direction. So I think it's really important.
Okay.
And I'm just going to chime in. I'm happy to be a resource to people if you want to reach out through my email is on the front sheet, I think. And
Adriana, maybe you could put the slide up that has our contact info.
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you.
There you
go.
You can even give campaign advice if you want to go that far.
Okay, I'm just looking to see if we have any other open questions, and it looks to me like I think, have answered most of them. I do see one more here, but that's really a comment about politics being a slippery slope. Be sure if you endorse someone, pick a winner.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Advice these days.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered all the basic questions, and there are some interesting comments and things that have been shared in the chat pod. There will be a transcript, I think, of the chat pod available. Is that right, Adriana and David? We can make that available, I think.
I believe that is out there, and I know it's saved. I don't know that we generally send it out, but I think it can be sent out. I do know that the link to the webinar recording will be posted on the website.
Yes.
It's also going to go out, because you mentioned earlier that you have 2 documents mentioned in your webinar. And
I was just
go ahead.
That's fine. No, I was just going to say that we will be sending you the CalPro document. I mean, sorry, not the CalPro document, the CCAE CAIA white paper that I mentioned will be going out to you. And the Allies framework, which is a 52-page document, will also be going out to you. And our staff, CCAE staff behind the scenes, David, will be sending that out. We can also provide you, as you see, the links also to the CalPro information if you'd like regarding the webinar. So there will be some things coming your way, but also please feel free to contact us. You have phone numbers there also to call, and we will be sure to get you some resource materials if you didn't receive them, or if there's something else we have that we can make available to you.
And I just want to add my thanks to, it's kind of like my holding the school board member meeting. It was like, is anybody going to show up? So it's great to see such great participation and good questions and interest. It warms my heart. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you to David, who's behind the scenes that you heard about. And thank you also to Adriana, who helped to conduct the show and provided support. Best wishes and best, going forward, and hope to see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne and Victoria, and also to our participants. We look forward to working with you all. Thank you very much to our sponsors as well, First Financial, GED Testing, and Burlington English. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.